friends and acquaintances are the surest passport to fortune. Arthur Schopenhauer. To marry is to have your rights and double your duties. Arthur Schopenhauer. Everyone takes the limits of his own vision for the limits of the world. Arthur Schopenhauer. Every truth passes through 3 stages before it is recognized. In the first it is ridiculed, in the second it is opposed, in the third it is regarded as self-evident. Arthur Schopenhauer. The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him. Arthur Schopenhauer. To buy books would be a good thing if we also could buy the time to read them. Arthur Schopenhauer. Books are like a mirror. If an ass looks in, you can't expect an angel to look out. Arthur Schopenhauer. Nature shows that with the growth of intelligence comes increased capacity for pain. And it is only with the highest degree of intelligence that suffering reaches its supreme point. Arthur Schopenhauer. To live alone is the fate of all great souls. Arthur Schopenhauer. There is no doubt that life is given us, not to be enjoyed, but to be overcome, got over. Arthur Schopenhauer. After your death you will be what you were before your birth. Arthur Schopenhauer. We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. Arthur Schopenhauer. The greatest achievements of the human mind are generally received with distrust. Arthur Schopenhauer. Every parting gives a foretaste of death. Every coming together again a foretaste of the resurrection. Arthur Schopenhauer. Without books the development of civilization would have been impossible. They are the engines of change, windows on the world, lighthouses as the poet said erected in the sea of time. They are companions, teachers, magicians, bankers of the treasures of the mind. Books are humanity in print. Arthur Schopenhauer. The 2 enemies of human happiness are pain and boredom. Arthur Schopenhauer. To find out your real opinion of someone, judge the impression you have when you first see a letter from them. Arthur Schopenhauer. Change alone is eternal, perpetual, immortal. Arthur Schopenhauer. Almost all of our sorrows spring out of our relations with other people. Arthur Schopenhauer. Time is that in which all things pass away. Arthur Schopenhauer. Will minus intellect constitutes vulgarity. Arthur Schopenhauer. It is a clear gain to sacrifice pleasure in order to avoid pain. Arthur Schopenhauer. The fundament upon which all our knowledge and learning rests is the inexplicable. Arthur Schopenhauer. If we were not all so excessively interested in ourselves, life would be so uninteresting that none of us would be able to endure it. Arthur Schopenhauer. Great men are like eagles, and build their nest on some lofty solitude. Arthur Schopenhauer. The man never feels the want of what it never occurs to him to ask for. Arthur Schopenhauer. A man can do what he wants, but not want what he wants. Arthur Schopenhauer. Fame is something that must be won. Honor is something that must not be lost. Arthur Schopenhauer. Obstinacy is the result of the will forcing itself into the place of the intellect. Arthur Schopenhauer. The closing years of life are like the end of a masquerade party, when the masks are dropped. Arthur Schopenhauer. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. Arthur Schopenhauer. Vengeance taken will often tear the heart and torment the conscience. Arthur Schopenhauer. The brain may be regarded as a kind of parasite of the organism, a pensioner, as it were, who dwells with the body. Arthur Schopenhauer. Willpower is to the mind like a strong blind man who carries on his shoulders a lame man who can see. Arthur Schopenhauer. A word too much always defeats its purpose. Arthur Schopenhauer. The wise have always said the same things, and fools, who are the majority, have always done just the opposite. Arthur Schopenhauer. It is only at the first encounter that a face makes its full impression on us. Arthur Schopenhauer. The longer a man's fame is likely to last, the longer it will be in coming. Arthur Schopenhauer. To free a person from error is to give, and not to take away. Arthur Schopenhauer. It's the niceties that make the difference. Fate gives us the hand, and we play the cards. Arthur Schopenhauer. In action a great heart is the chief qualification. In work, a great head. Arthur Schopenhauer. The person who writes for fools is always sure of a large audience. Arthur Schopenhauer. If there is anything in the world that can really be called a man's property, it is surely that which is the result of his mental activity. Arthur Schopenhauer. Natural abilities can almost compensate for the want of every kind of cultivation, but no cultivation of the mind can make up for the want of natural abilities. Arthur Schopenhauer. The present is the only reality and the only certainty. Arthur Schopenhauer. The first 40 years of life give us the text. The next 30 supply the commentary on it. Arthur Schopenhauer. Because people have no thoughts to deal in, they deal cards, and try and win one another's money. Idiots. Arthur Schopenhauer. A man's face as a rule says more, and more interesting things, than his mouth, for it is a compendium of everything his mouth will ever say. In that it is the monogram of all this man's thoughts and aspirations. Arthur Schopenhauer. It is with trifles and when he is off guard that a man best reveals his character. Arthur Schopenhauer. Each day is a little life. Every waking and rising a little birth. Every fresh morning a little youth. Every going to rest and sleep a little death. Arthur Schopenhauer. In the sphere of thought, absurdity and perversity remain the masters of the world, and their dominion is suspended only for brief periods. Arthur Schopenhauer. Reading is equivalent to thinking with someone else's head instead of with one's own. Arthur Schopenhauer. The alchemists in their search for gold discovered many other things of greater value. Arthur Schopenhauer. With people of limited ability, modesty is merely honesty. But with those who possess great talent, it is hypocrisy. Arthur Schopenhauer. The difficulty is to try and teach the multitude that something can be true and untrue at the same time. Arthur Schopenhauer. Wicked thoughts and worthless efforts gradually set their mark on the face, especially the eyes. Arthur Schopenhauer. Patriotism, when it wants to make itself felt in the domain of learning, is a dirty fellow who should be thrown out of doors. Arthur Schopenhauer. People of wealth and the so-called upper class suffer the most from boredom. Arthur Schopenhauer. National character is only another name for the particular form which the littleness, perversity and baseness of mankind take in every country. Every nation mocks at other nations, and all are right. Arthur Schopenhauer. In our monogamous part of the world, to marry means to have one's rights and double one's duties. Arthur Schopenhauer. Money is human happiness in the abstract. He, then, who is no longer capable of enjoying human happiness in the concrete devotes his heart entirely to money. Arthur Schopenhauer. No one can transcend their own individuality. Arthur Schopenhauer. A man's delight in looking forward to and hoping for some particular satisfaction is a part of the pleasure flowing out of it, enjoyed in advance. But this is afterward deducted, for the more we look forward to anything the less we enjoy it when it comes. Arthur Schopenhauer. Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world. Arthur Schopenhauer. It is in the treatment of trifles that a person shows what they are. Arthur Schopenhauer. As the biggest library, if it is in disorder, is not as useful as a small but well-arranged one. So you may accumulate a vast amount of knowledge, but it will be of far less value to you than a much smaller amount if you have not thought it over for yourself. Arthur Schopenhauer. Our first ideas of life are generally taken from fiction rather than fact. Arthur Schopenhauer. The word of man is the most durable of all material. Arthur Schopenhauer. Style is what gives value and currency to thoughts. Arthur Schopenhauer. Politeness is to human nature what warmth is to wax. Arthur Schopenhauer. Satisfaction consists in freedom from pain, which is the positive element of life. Arthur Schopenhauer. The discovery of truth is prevented more effectively, not by the false appearance things present and which mislead into error, not directly by weakness of the reasoning powers, but by preconceived opinion, by prejudice. Arthur Schopenhauer. Great minds are related to the brief span of time during which they live as great buildings are to a little square in which they stand. You cannot see them in all their magnitude, because you are standing too close to them. Arthur Schopenhauer. Suffering by nature or chance never seems so painful as suffering inflicted on us by the arbitrary will of another. Arthur Schopenhauer. The doctor sees all the weakness of mankind, the lawyer all the wickedness, the theologian all the stupidity. Arthur Schopenhauer.